No one wants to live in a neighborhood where they fear going out because there's so much crime. You could have said that was the case in certain areas of New York City back in the days, and then sometimes in the 1990s, the crime rate started to drop. Police might report to harsh tactics such as intensive patrolling of the streets. Judges might hand down rather long sentences for not so serious crimes. The streets are safer, but not everyone thinks crackdowns are the best way to reduce crime. This is a definition of a crackdown. Sudden and dramatic increase in police officer presence, sanction, and threats of apprehension either for specific offences or for all offences in specific places. As we said, crime can be reduced by oppressive policing. But who on the earth wants to live in a place where they can only feel safe? If people in uniform are everywhere, this kind of dystopian reality suits no one. Experts on crime know this, and so the emphasis for some people for a long time has been on trying to make people want to be better citizens rather than oppressing them or scaring them. A result of this is the theory we are going to discuss today. The concept is pretty simple. If you value the neighborhood where you live, you will be a better citizen and you will treat the place with respect. On the other hand, if you live in a hellhole that looks like a hellhole, you might well act like the person that live in a hellhole. In 1982, two guys called James Wilson and George Kelling wrote a story for the Atlantic Monthly called Broken Windows. This is a part of what they said. Consider a building with a few broken windows. If the windows are not repaired, the tendency is for vandals to break a few more windows. Eventually, they may even break into the building and its occupied, perhaps become squatters or light fires inside or consider a pavement. Some litter accumulates, soon more litter accumulates. Eventually, people even start leaving bags of refuse from take-out restaurants there or even break into cars. You go to a school where the toilets are broken and there is graffiti everywhere. And some part of you think that you don't have to study very hard or because no one gives a heck at the school. And so, in parts of the USA, the broken windows theory was adopted. That meant police taking the riff-raff off the streets. But it also meant keeping the street clean, and it meant no broken windows. This is sometimes called informal social context. Some people have argued that by policing the streets so much no one dares to step out of line can be oppressive, but argues that having beat cops who communicate with locals can only be a good thing. The broken windows theory is directed at the norm setting of urban disorder, crime and antisocial behavior breeding the same, where if an urban area is left in a state of disrepair, broken windows, rubbish on the streets and overgrown gardens, people will follow suit and adopt the same attitude to their environment. They are living the norm. The theory simply states that something like an abandoned building with a broken window signals a careless attitude towards property and therefore an absence of respect for the law. The broken window is the first step in a neighbor's slow deterioration, and as time goes on, there will be other show of abandon and decay. The ill causes of broken window theory includes public gambling, public drinking leading to drunk drivers on the road, urination, prostitutes hanging out on the streets, vandalism, drug dealing, littering, theft, and panhandling. When present in a neighborhood, these activities tend to elevate residents' perceptions of disorder, signaling impending future danger in the neighborhood if such disorder continues unaddressed. Residents who develop such perceptions often become fearful of being victimized. The theory holds that fear of crime is principally a product of individual perceptions of order derived from visible cues, mediated by social interactions with neighbors. The disorder fear nexus leads to progressive alienation from others in one's surroundings and an erosion of the sense of collective efficacy among residents. As a natural response to this subjective take on the external environment, citizens will reduce their community oriented activities, the very behaviors that tend to improve neighborhood civility and promote collective efficacy. How really people tend to avoid crime? Prevention. Particularly, the concept of diminished collective efficacy is used to express how untended disorder phenomena at the neighborhood level are seen as the starting point, leading to increased public perceptions of disorder, elevated fear of crime victimization, and a weakening sense of informal social control. Consequently, it is asserted that in areas where disorder is pervasive, residents ultimately have a tendency to retreat from community life and turn their homes into virtual prisons, or they may break just their relations with neighbors and leave the area. Even the broken window theory explained by Jane Jacobs says, it does not take many incidents of violence to make people fear the streets. As they fear them, they use them less, which make the streets still more unsafe. First, we must understand that the public peace, the sidewalk and the street peace of cities is not kept primarily by the police, necessary though they are. It is kept primarily by an intricate, almost unconscious network of voluntary controls and standards among the people themselves. Usually, the study and analysis of such theories are done at smaller scale, at a neighborhood scale, to understand the variations among the perceptions of the people. Here is a research model of APCP, which stands for Actual Participation in Crime Prevention. To better understand this table, the disorder incidence within a 0.3 mile buffer acts as a positive impact for perception of social disorder. This again impacts positively on fear of personal safety. The perception of social disorder impacts negatively on collective efficacy. The fear of personal safety again tends to impact negatively on collective efficacy. The collective efficacy further tends to impact positively on PPCP and APCP. PPCP stands for Perception of Participation in Crime Prevention and APCP stands for Actual Participation in Crime Prevention.
There are different variables which has implication on the broken window theory. The first one is dependent variables, which includes level of citizen involvement in reducing crime and unrest, participation in crime prevention program to make the neighborhood safer, keeping the streets safe from crimes, participating in block watch, providing valuable information to the police, providing safe neighborhood environment for children, actual participation in crime prevention, participation in neighborhood crime prevention activities, participation in community meetings organized by police, participation in school-related prevention activities. Second comes explanatory variables, which includes disorder incidents within 0.3 mile buffer ratio, perception of disorder, drunk drivers on the road, people drinking in excess in public, prostitutes hanging out on the street, and vandalism. Third is control variables, which affects the broken window theory are race, age, gender, formal educational attainment, and residential stability, crime victimization. Last one is personal safety, which includes collective efficacy, notify the police about illegal activity, trust a neighbor to return a favor, have faith in neighbor to assist you when needed, fear of personal safety, feel safe being out alone at night, feel safe being out alone during the day. You need to also think about how likely are adults in your neighborhood to take responsibility for notifying the police about illegal activity occurring in the neighborhood. If there is a suspicious person hanging around your block, someone is likely to call the police. When you do a favor for a neighbor, can you generally trust neighbor to return the favor? If you are in need of help with your car stuck in front of your residence, how much faith do you have that your neighbor would come to your assistance? Let's see now how it worked. As we said, this kind of policing was first adopted in New York City, but later broken window policing went to Boston and then LA. In New York, police got tough on graffiti while the city tried to get rid of the old graffiti. Hanging out on streets, drinking became a big no-no, as did public urination, cleaning car windows for few cents, and all manner of street activity not deemed appropriate. Take away petty crime, ugly things that are visible on streets, and the result should be that serious crime would happen less. And that happened. New York did experience a reduction in serious crime since the broken window theory was adopted. Some say this was the way to go, while others say it is too oppressive and target poor. Let's see what the New Yorker has to say about this theory. It writes, broken window is one of the most cited article in the history of criminology. It's sometimes called Bible of the policing. But it also makes a strong point in that writer says broken window has always focused way too much on cleaning up the streets of riffraff rather than doing what it was originally mainly intended to do. That was clean up the city of actual broken windows. It should have meant investing more in housing, fixing places up, doing something about all those abandoned buildings. New Yorkers argues that this didn't happen enough. Another source writes that over the USA in 1990s the crime rate was dropping, on average by 26%. But in New York there were a reduction of 56%. Still there are skeptics that just say New York City was a part of trend of crime reduction in USA, something partially attributed to a decline in unemployment.
So, the broken windows theory has drawn considerable academic attention and even more general consideration among police practitioners around the world. As a result, the goal of the study is to investigate the relationship between social disorder, criminal fear, group efficacy, and genuine civic involvement aimed at promoting public safety. Wilson and Kelling in 1982 contend that since its effect how locals see disorder, social disorder is the primary factor causing disruptions in neighborhood life. The real disorder measure is based on incidences of social nuisance crime and disorder that occurred within a 0.3 mile radius of a respondent's home. There are good reasons to believe that homeowners' view of disorder around their homes will likely differ from perceptions of disorder in their big community because residents are typically more concerned about their homes and immediate surroundings. Resident intense fear for their own safety are sparked by perceptions of social disorder, and this affects their readiness to defend others in the community. Residents' freedom of movement is restricted and their level of trust in one another declines. Concentrated areas of disadvantage are more likely to encounter greater rates of disorderly crime. A rise in perception of disorder, an increase in dread of crime, and a decrease in a sense of community efficacy is just a few of the views and behaviors that residents exhibit as a result of observed social dysfunction. Numerous local police departments have put in place a wide range of strategies to deal with the disorder problem over the last 3 decades. The origins of broken windows continued. Herman Goldstein and Egon Bittner in 1967 says that police officers should invest in understanding community, taking time to meet with citizens. Law enforcement agencies should engage in ethnically diversifying. There should be a medium of communication between citizens and police officers outside of regular dispatch.
A system of police discretion needs to be utilized. This will ensure that resources and energy are not wasted entirely on petty criminals. Policies seems to expand broken windows. Other agencies are investing heavily into community involvement. Many agencies run a citizen volunteer program, creating a medium of communication between regular citizens and police officers. Agencies advocating a more ethnically diverse police force. Discretion utilized in regards and incarceration, more resource and energy are geared towards imprisoning violent criminals, not petty ones. Vacation house checks, citizens volunteer patrolling neighborhoods in unmarked police vehicles, explorers program for youth interested in law enforcement, using explorers as bait for selling liquor to underage individuals, neighborhood watch program for suspicious behavior. Various causes and circumstances that impacts the lives of individuals and families as they grow up, and the local surroundings and conditions all push an individual towards the wrongdoing. People must be aware of how to stop crime and the possible crime prevention programs to make the implementation of this program more accessible. All governmental and private initiatives, including program and preventive measures that address crime as a phenomenon occurring in society or an individual occurrence, try to minimize or decrease the risk. Variables associated with crime. Identifying the variables linked with various forms of crime can establish a set of policies and programs to modify those causes and prevent or reduce crimes. These underlying or causal factors are frequently referred to as risk factors. They involve global problems and opportunities that affect the social-economic conditions of the globe, parameters influencing individual nations, surrounding provinces, neighborhoods, and those affecting individuals. School-based program and community-based programs, for example, local residencies, are example of prevention. For example, resident action organizations that encourage mutually shared investment and management and crime prevention security systems. It is essential to implement some infrastructure changes. For example, proper street lighting, regulating access to buildings, reducing traffic and pedestrian movement, and segregating residential spaces into recognizable zones to avoid theft. Law enforcement organizations should work with local residents, engage the community more, and foster possibilities for constructive encounters with the police in order to effectively address minor infractions and unrest in a community. Municipal governments and their respective police forces should modify their public involvement methods for crime reduction and prevention by concentrating on the areas where the public perceives the most disorder. Crime might indeed happen in bad-looking places, but it does not necessarily mean one caused the other. Perhaps poverty is the major reason why crimes happen.